There's an interesting character in the news. His name is Chesa Boudin. And he has an interesting, somewhat indirect relationship to me and Debbie because he is the adopted son of one Bill Ayers. And I'll let Debbie kind of pick up the narrative from there. But talk a little bit about Chesa Boudin.
Yeah, well, I didn't know anything about him. Mostly I was doing a little bit of research on militants that go to Venezuela and tout socialism and want to bring it back to America. And one of these such people, militants, as they refer to him, he's referred to as revolutionary militant in America by Venezuelans. He went to Venezuela multiple times. Once in 2006, he wanted to see what the schools were like, and of course wanted to investigate the social justice aspect of education and all those things. And so he was he made a series of videos, 12 videos on YouTube, and they were with the counselor for education in Venezuela. And of course, he doesn't know any English.
And you're talking about Bill Ayers.
I'm talking about Bill Ayers. Yeah. No, I'm talking about the person that is in charge of the education program in Venezuela doesn't know English.
Oh, right.
So Bill Ayers, who doesn't know Spanish, of course, needed an interpreter. And this interpreter happens to be Chesa Boudin.
Okay, let's do a little bit of background before we come back to Venezuela. So Chesa Boudin is the son of Gilbert and Kathy Boudin. Gilbert and Kathy Boudin were revolutionaries in America in the 60s, Marxists. They took part in a Weather Underground robbery of the Brinks armored trucks. This goes back to 1981. 2 cops and a security guard were killed. Boudin actually served a little over 20 years in prison until Governor Cuomo, as one of his parting shots, paroled him.
Right.
And so essentially Chesa Boudin's real dad, he was raised by Bill Ayers and by Bernadine Dorn, his adoptive parents, but his real dad is now out. And so pick up the story from there. We're now putting Chesa Boudin in Venezuela.
So I just want to show you a little clip of that exchange with Chesa speaking Spanish.
Bueno, es interesante. Yo empecé mi carrera como profesor en el año 1965 como parte de una escuela de libertad muy pequeña asociada con el movimiento a favor de los derechos civiles.
Wow, as you can see in the background, there's a large, very large photo of none other than Che Guevara. So these 3 men are sitting there touting Marxist ideology. And, he was interpreting for Bill Ayers and giving kind of this, counselor of education, the scoop on who Bill Ayers was, where he went to school, what he did. And he referred to him as a revolutionary militant in America. Bill Ayers then went on to say he wanted to bring that education system back to America because he felt it was just.
It's kind of amusing as you sent me those videos.
I did send you the videos.
This is before we actually knew each other.
This is how we met. So Chesa and Mr. Ayers are partly responsible for this, but for our meeting. But more than that, I want to just kind of say that when this Chesa person was running for mayor of San Francisco, I don't think anyone knew that he was a Marxist, communist, revolutionary who went to Cuba for many years. Really, that's where he learned Spanish and ultimately ended up in Venezuela.
Okay, so let me correct you slightly. Yes. Remember Chesa Boudin, not mayor, he's a DA.
I'm sorry, DA,
okay.
not mayor.
He's
DA.
He's been the DA. Can you believe this? Here you have a guy who is a Viva la Revolucion. He loves the Cuban Revolution. He loves the Venezuelan Revolution. This isn't like socialism and decline of classic. These guys are communists and they are Marxists.
Yes.
And they see themselves as active revolutionaries.
Active, but, and a really big one, is that when he ran for DA of San Francisco, on his bio, he never once mentioned any of this, none of it. He says that he personally understands the impact of incarceration because both his parents were incarcerated when he was a child, yada, yada, but never, of course, Rhodes Scholar, graduated from Yale Law School, worked as a clerk in the Court of Appeals, blah, blah, blah. Never did he say, I went to Cuba, Fidel Castro was my mentor, absolutely loved everything Che Guevara did. Hugo Chavez was amazing. None of this.
So he knows that even in liberal San Francisco, right?
Right.
This is not going to play well. In other words, nobody wants the DA who's some kind of a communist revolutionary.
Right.
And now let's talk a bit about his tenure as DA, because the news is that there is a recall petition to yank this guy out of office. It's gotten 85,000 signatures, which is more than enough to put it on the ballot. It's going to go on the ballot next June. And here's a guy who has eliminated cash bail. He said that if you're arrested, your gang affiliation is not going to matter in the way that they go after you. He's been using the pandemic as an excuse to release people out of prison. In fact, he's cut the city's jail population from an average of 1,200 people per day to 700 people. So here's a guy who's essentially emptying out the jails because he sees this as a kind of way to move the society, move San Francisco in particular, towards this Marxist idea of social justice. I think that even for the people who live in San Francisco, we're very left-wing, as we know. You basically have these gay guys coming out of their nice apartments, and what do they see is a big deposit of dung in their lobby, and they go,
well,
this is unacceptable. I don't like this.
Yeah. So, but people shouldn't be shocked that a communist Marxist doesn't think that criminals are all that bad. And so you can't say that you're going to be for the victims and for the criminals at the same time, because it just, if you are for criminals, you cannot be for victims. It's just, you can't do both. And he is definitely for the criminal. And this is why he's being recalled, because the crime statistics in San Francisco have skyrocketed. And, you can't blame, I'm sorry, Chesa, you can't blame the Republicans for this. You just can't. And you are, because you go to your website and that's the first thing that is on there.
The Republicans are plotting against him.
The Republicans are taking, aims at him, and he has kept his promises. Yeah, his promises of being good to the criminals. Guess what happens when you're good to the criminals? Yeah, crime goes up.
Yeah, so interestingly, he's not being recalled because they've discovered his communist roots.
No, of course
he's not being recalled because of Cuba, Venezuela.
No.
He's being recalled because even in liberal San Francisco, people want to be able to walk to work and go to a restaurant without being harassed, molested, robbed, raped. And this guy is the accessory of those crimes in the sense that he knows about them. And yet, not only does he not do something about them, but he's trying to put more criminals back on the street.
Yeah. And you know what? We don't like crime. Sorry, Chesa.